My children are gone.
The UK, France and Canada have threatened concrete actions unless Israel stops the war. Israel's government is fighting back.
I think the fact that the leadership of these countries suffering from a serious broken moral compass. They will pay the price of losing their humanity and moral compass, because putting the blame on a democracy who fights against this evil, again, it will take price also from these countries, because they want to take down your countries as well.
Israel is staring down the judgment of its allies, but its allies are feeling the judgment of children with empty bowls, accusing the world of empty words. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Our international editor, Jeremy Bowen, has this assessment of the EU and UK's moves to increase pressure on Israel.
I think it's a really significant moment, actually, because if you think back to after the October 7th attacks, when Israel went to war in response to that, it didn't just have the latest American weapons, political, diplomatic support, resupply coming from the States. It also had, and in its own way, just as important, a great big well of credit, of solidarity, of fellow feeling from significant Western allies like Britain, Canada and France. Now, I think that the statement that they put out and the things that have been said today, and Israel's very fierce response to it as well, it shows that that line of credit has been exhausted. So, certainly as far as those countries are concerned, Israel is in a different place now. The British and the others have said that the offensive in Gaza has to stop and they need to let in thousands of aid lorries. Now, there will be concrete consequences, they say concrete measures if that doesn't happen. Britain's already done a few things. So I think it's very unlikely that Israel will respond to that. I think the only government that it would listen to would be the United States, President Trump, and at the moment he's got other things, it seems, very much on his mind. But I think longer term, this really matters, because don't forget there's various legal processes going on. There's a warrant for the arrest of Prime Minister Netanyahu on war crimes charges. There's that case at the International Court of Justice about genocide in Gaza, brought by the South Africans with the support of other nations. And those processes might well go on for years. And I think that if Israel is in a different moral place, with a different, its previous very important support from Western European countries, especially and Canada, tainted by what's happened, that weakens Israel. And I think there are plenty of Israelis who will realize that, even if the government itself is pushing back very hard.
Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky has accused Russia of trying to buy time to continue its war in Ukraine, a day after US President Donald Trump said progress towards a ceasefire had been made in a call with Russia's President Vladimir Putin. On social media, President Zelensky said if Russia continues to put forward unrealistic conditions and undermine progress, there must be tough consequences. Well, to discuss this more, I'm joined by former US Ambassador to Ukraine, William Taylor. Thank you very much for your time. Now, President Zelensky has already been questioning Russia's commitment to this sort of ceasefire talks. How do you see Russia's position here?
So, Steve, I think it's clear that the Russians, Mr. Putin in particular, are stalling. They're not serious about negotiation. They're not serious about a ceasefire. They're not serious about stopping this war. They're stalling for time. They're playing for time, and they so far are succeeding.
So what leverage then does President Trump have to get Putin and Russia to the table and to discuss a ceasefire? What leverage does he have, and will he use it?
That's the right question. Will he use it? Because he's got leverage. He certainly has leverage. The Europeans have demonstrated that there are sanctions that can be put on in addition to the existing sanctions to make existing sanctions work better. Europeans have shown that you can put more sanctions on banks, Russian banks, on the energy sector, reducing the revenues going into the Russians. So there's leverage that President Trump can use if he's willing to do that. In addition, he can demonstrate to the Ukrainians and to the Russians that he's willing to continue to provide military support to the Ukrainians. But again, it's going to take a decision by the administration, by the U.S. administration, to use that leverage.
So the next question, logically, then, is what is or how committed is President Trump to Ukraine's sovereignty? He said several times in the past that it's a European problem.
He has said many things. He said it's a European problem. He's also said he's committed himself, since he was a candidate, to solving this problem, to resolving this war. And at times, he has devoted himself and his administration to this. He's focused hard on this. He's had up and down with President Zelensky. Most recently, the conversations over the weekend have been good. The conversation in the Vatican, but with just Zelensky and Trump, were also good. So it does vary, but it does take a concerted effort, a determined effort, to put pressure on the problem. The problem is clearly Putin, and he is going to have to be forced to come to the table.
Is there more that Europe could and should be doing?
Absolutely, absolutely. And Europeans, I believe, are stepping up. Europeans are providing the kinds of weapons. They're committing additional resources. As I say, the sanctions that were announced yesterday and today are a very good step. So the Europeans are doing this. The Europeans are even seriously talking about putting military forces on the ground in Ukraine after a ceasefire, to enforce a ceasefire, to be sure that the Russians don't invade again. So yes, the Europeans have a lot to do. A lot more resources need to be put into both their weapons and their defense industries, but they are stepping up. It's the Americans that need to step up now as well.
We'll leave it there. Thanks very much for your insight today.
Cái video này gợi nhớ trong tôi về chiến tranh Việt Nam, thành ra tôi dùng cái này làm tài liệu để nghiên cứu về chiến tranh và hòa bình. Cảm ơn quý vị đã dành thời giờ theo dõi cái tài liệu này, và chúng tôi tóm tắt là trên thế gian này nơi nào cũng có những anh hùng đã hy sinh vì đất nước, vì tổ quốc của họ.